Hey, I welcome you very warmly to this next reading on the channel. I am, of course, David, and today we'll take a look at what your relationship will look like, or perhaps how his approach to you will change over the next 3 months. So we'll see what you can expect from this relationship and what his attitude will be like in the next 3 months. So I warmly invite you to listen. We'll see what the cards have prepared today and how the attitude towards you from this person you have in mind will change. So let's see how it looks. We're starting with the Two of Swords, which is quite an interesting card. The Two of Swords is primarily a card associated with some kind of conscious paralysis, meaning it seems that at this moment he's not in a place where he doesn't know. He's in a place where he knows, but doesn't want to know, so to speak. The Two of Swords isn't being lost, it's an active refusal, or let's say a refusal to look at something that is visible. He covered his eyes not because he's blind, but because seeing would require a decision, and a decision would require responsibility. So in the context of his approach to you, this specifically means that he's functioning in a state of suspension that he perhaps created himself, and that he certainly maintains himself. This isn't a situation where he's waiting for the right moment or gathering information, because he already has that. He has what he needs to define himself, and that's exactly why he's not acting. Because acting would close doors, and he wants to keep these doors open, and your presence in his life serves the function of an option, not a choice, meaning you are, for him, something he can return to or not. And this ambiguity is very comfortable for him at this moment. So this mechanism that I see here is very specific. He rationalizes his suspension as prudence, meaning he tells himself that it's not ready, that it's complicated, that he needs time. Perhaps he also communicates such messages to you somewhere. Perhaps he gives you such signs. However, this can be very fabricated, let's say. So this is the truth, but only insofar as he himself believes it, because in reality, time isn't what's missing. What he lacks is readiness to bear the costs of choice. So this means that his approach to you at this moment is an expression of feelings. It's not an expression of feelings, nor their absence, let's say, but it's such an expression of how he generally functions under emotional pressure, meaning he escapes precisely into this neutrality, doesn't push away, doesn't pull in. Perhaps sometimes there are worse or better moments somewhere, but generally he tries to balance like this, a bit like the Two of Pentacles, but still in this place without decision, because the Two of Pentacles is precisely the card that more suggests that one time he brings you flowers and another time he's completely cold. Here it's rather a bit less extreme, I would say. Although, as I say, warmth and coldness can also appear, but not as extreme as with the Two of Pentacles. At least that's how it always seems to me. Seven of Cups we have next. So a card that shows me that he's kind of afraid of his own desires, because here we have a question about what he fears or what he avoids, and precisely the Seven of Cups is his deeper fear. This is a fear not of you, not of the relationship, not of rejection, but that he himself doesn't know what he wants, and that it may never actually become clear. The Seven of Cups is a card of illusion and dispersion, but precisely in the position of fear, it speaks about something very specific, meaning he has so many possible versions in his head of what life could be that none of them becomes real, and this can actually paralyze him more than any external obstacle. In the context of the relationship with you, this fear works in a very specific way, meaning he idealizes and devalues alternately, not maliciously, but automatically. So, when you're close, he sees complications, costs, risk, and when you're far away, he only sees what's best. So let's say basically it's not manipulation on his part, it's more a structural problem with how he processes emotional reality, except that of course this isn't an excuse, because I sometimes say it as if it were an excuse that it's not manipulation, so he's already pure. Well, no, it's not about that. It's about the fact that we're more, looking for that kind of factor that influences what's happening, and not some kind of external excuse or external, let's say, explanation, because manipulation is such an external thing, while internally it stems from something more, and that's what we're looking for. So let's say that externally it can also be manipulation, but internally it's about something else, and that's exactly what I feel in this case too, that he avoids the moment of verification, meaning as long as nothing is tested, everything can be perfect. If he really entered into a relationship with you with such full attention, with commitment, with risk, he would have to confront whether reality matches the imagination, and deep down he's afraid it won't match up, not because you are insufficient, but because he is never as satisfied with reality as he is with his imagination of it. So somewhere, this is a bit like that inner child who imagines much more, and then there's actually a little less of it, a bit worse than in all those imaginings about it all. So he kind of lives alongside his own life, always with one foot in what could be. This card also says that he himself gets lost within himself, has those moments when he truly doesn't know what he feels for you. And fundamentally, this is not a game. So this is his authentic disorientation, let's say. The problem is that instead of going through it, he stays in it, and this disorientation becomes home. In a way, it also transfers to you, because obviously when he doesn't know what next, what to do with this, it's clear that it can transfer to you. And you'll also have those moments where you don't know whether to go into this relationship, or maybe break it off, or throw it away, say enough. Questions appear then that can actually translate onto you. Strength in the third position is a card that shows what he really wants, though he may not show it. Strength shows that he wants to be seen, not admired, not desired, just seen. So he wants someone with whom he doesn't have to pretend he has everything figured out. Someone who will see in him what is strong, but also what is wavering, and won't run away, of course. Strength in this position speaks of a very deep, often unconscious need. That is, he's looking for a relationship that won't break him, but also won't spare him, so to speak. That is able to sustain him. This is key to understanding his behavior toward you. He feels something in you that attracts him. That's precisely because you are a kind of mirror for him, in which he sees himself differently than usual. Something appears in him when he's with you that he would like to develop, some version of himself that is calmer, more decisive, more authentic, and that's exactly what keeps him there. It's not closeness that frightens him, but the fact that this closeness might demand something from him that he would have to live up to that image. So it's heavy for him, because as I said earlier, he wants to be visible. What's more, strength. This card of taming, not by force, but by patience and calmness. I often mention this, that it's precisely this lion that is being tamed by that woman in this picture. And there's something very specific in this. Well, he wants to be tamed. It would connect like that, right? So he wants someone who won't let him go, but he also wants to do it without aggression, so rather without any BDSM or other ordinary things, or maybe even good ones. In any case, without ultimatums, without drama. He wants to feel that someone is stable enough next to him so that he can allow himself instability, except that, on the other hand, it's a bit like with a child that needs to be raised. After all, you don't want to be a nanny, you don't want to be an educator, you just want to be a woman who has a man for a real relationship. So it doesn't quite fit, right? But that's the energy coming from this. Well, because here we have precisely strength, which is such a taming, and that's what I associate it with. So, well, interesting. Now the question is, why doesn't he show this? Perhaps, well, he doesn't show it, because that's usually how it is anyway. Showing this would require admitting that he needs it, right? So listen, take me, organize my life, help me with something. That sounds weak, totally unmanly, right? So here it's quite logical that he doesn't show it. On the other hand, if he has such an approach, does it even make sense to seek this relationship or develop it in some way, since he himself hasn't taken care of himself properly yet, let alone a relationship? Well, this is of course a matter for thought. Anyway, I don't recommend being a nanny or educator for someone, but I think you know that well. Often when I read the comments, I see that a circle of aware people has truly formed here, and somewhere I think that those who are new, or perhaps less aware, will also learn this here, because I have the impression that such energy often emanates from these readings. Being aware of what you receive and what you give, because this is very important, which is also often reminded by the six. For example, the Six of Clubs. Anyway, let's see what's next. However, in the meantime, I would like to invite you to the website arcanemoonshop.com if you need a private reading, one that's more specific in the context of your question, because you have some question for the cards, some situation you want to clarify, or anything that's bothering you and the cards can help. I invite you to a private reading at arcanemoonshop.com. The link is also in the description. Meanwhile, let's check what's next. In the fourth position, we have the Seven of Swords appearing. An exceptionally interesting card, a card which I generally don't have the impression that this energy is often similar. Sometimes I think about this, sometimes I discuss this with someone, that these readings are so similar, but on the other hand, maybe that's the point, that this energy is such that on certain days it connects in a certain way and then changes somehow and looks a bit different. However, here, card number 4, Seven of Swords, which is an internal factor that will sort of determine how it will work. And here the Seven of Swords is exceptionally interesting because it shows that his tendency to act quietly will be the deciding factor. This is a person who doesn't make decisions publicly, doesn't announce changes, doesn't talk about what he's planning. He'll simply do something differently one day and it will be a done deal. The Seven of Swords in this position says that the key move from his side, whatever it may be, won't come through conversation, explanation, or declaration. So unfortunately, as often happens, you might find that something suddenly happens and it's already a done deal. So in the context of his approach to you, this means that if he decides to get closer, he won't tell you directly. You'll start to notice it through some small changes, more frequent contact, a different tone, presence where he wasn't before. And if he decides to pull away in the other direction, he won't say that either. He'll simply be around less. And here both scenarios will play out without the conversation that should logically precede such a change. So this factor that will change his approach to you won't be something big. It will be a small signal from your side or a situation that forces him to take a position without the possibility of further, so to speak, suspension. That's how I'd see it here. So let's see what's next. Let's see the external factor this time, or the situation that might cause this. We have the King of Pentacles. So the King of Pentacles is a card of stability above all, and a card that I always associate with such a man, typically settled, masculine. So perhaps such an external factor that will influence him will be some man who is already settled, so to speak, maybe his father, maybe a brother who, for example, is doing better, but it could also be work, finances, everyday life will exert specific pressure on him during these 3 months. So it's possible that some family situation or everyday life will influence him in such a way that he changes his approach to you. For example, it will be harder for him, he'll have even more chaos, so you're claiming that to stabilize this, he'll grab onto you, for example. I don't want to speak badly like this, because it sounds a bit bad again. Because actually we don't want such damn situations, because after all, when someone grabs on, they pull you down. Obviously sometimes we'll help and pull them out, but if they pull too hard, we can fall with them, and that's dangerous, so you have to be careful. Anyway, well, exactly, this is for me such damn. You have to be careful not to say too much. The King was in the 6th position, meaning a breakthrough moment. How it will play out, visible impulse, not through reflection, not through long weighing of the relationship, but through some sudden inner fire. So you see, there won't be something like him thinking it through and making a plan, but rather suddenly, from one day to the next. I talked about this earlier. Alright, and let's look at these questions number 3, meaning the most important questions in this whole spread, so I encourage you to listen a bit longer, to hang in there. Let's see who you are to him in 3 months, meaning the emotional approach somewhere there, such action or lack of action, and the final energy of the relationship in 3 months. Okay, we have 3 cards. We have the Page of Pentacles, 6 of Cups, and Ace of Wands. I also generally often read these cards out loud, because if someone is listening to this and not looking at the screen, at least they know what's going on, where this comes from. Anyway, this shows up interestingly because it shows above all big emotions, meaning these 3 months that will now be passing, let's say the next few weeks, will be under the sign of such emotions, under the sign of fire too, so a lot will happen based on emotions. You can expect that he'll come back with some memory, or come back with something you associate with, meaning, for example, invite you to some hotel where you've already been, or to some place where you've already been, or give some gift that, for example. A candle that he also gave you at your first meeting, or flowers from the same florist, or a teddy bear from the same place he gave you at the beginning. Something like that, sentimental, that's what you can expect. He'll want to win you over. Listen, remember how it was when I gave you that teddy bear? How super soft it was? And by the way, he'll ask, do you still sleep with it? It's so nice and everything. It's building that sentiment. A bit funny, but also something kind of cliche, isn't it? It's such a sentimental card, sometimes even a card of returning to heritage. But anyway, this month will end with such an explosion, meaning these 3 months, right? So in 3 months, let's say, this relationship will be in such a place where perhaps emotions will be much hotter, much more heated. Perhaps it will actually work on you, on your senses, let's say. And this will cause, there will be such a moment when you'll say, damn, maybe after all, maybe something will come of this. Well, it's not that easy either. I often think it happens that from the perspective of time, distance, or generally not being, so to speak, in the midst of emotions, we think to ourselves, no, there's no way I won't go for it, it's impossible. But when emotions are present, we think about it differently. Because if we were rational, if we always thought only with logic, we'd probably live in a completely different world, right? But emotions are a big part of decisions and a big part of how we act later. So here something will ignite in connection with this memory, with this possible gift, something like that. You can expect this, and then such a Page of Pentacles will appear, which can show some kind of new path or possibilities that appear, some kind of small choice there, something like that. That's how I would see it. So this relationship over the course of 3 months might actually develop, but it's somewhat like out of this chaos that he has in his life, he has experiences, especially after the King of Pentacles, which appeared as the 5th position, which showed that something will force him, maybe someone important, some father or brother who is more settled, and will tell him, listen, get yourself together, because this can't go on much longer, you're too chaotic, your life is totally messed up, get yourself together, do something about it, temper him down. That's how I would see it. So, interesting, an atypical connection today, really nice layouts like this. So thank you for listening. I invite you for private readings at arcanemoonshop.com. And in the meantime, thank you, and I wish you a wonderful, beautiful day. See you later. Hey,